On today's podcast, we're joined by a very experienced coach. He's been at every level, currently is working with Maryland as an analyst, and we're really excited to have him here, Coach Ron Zook. Coach, thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate what you're doing for this profession. Obviously, this is something that, it just allows people to gain more information. And I think if no matter how old or how long you've been in the game, I mean, that's the deal. You never stop learning and you never stop trying to gain information.
Appreciate that, Coach. Well, I know you're an Ohio guy here. You grew up in Loudonville, not too far from where I am, and got your start playing there, coaching in Ohio as well, Ohio high school football in Orrville. Played at Miami of Ohio, and at some point there, Coach, you had this desire to become a football coach. For you, when was the idea sparked that football coaching was going to be your career?
Well, I never planned on getting into coaching. It's just something I was very, very fortunate to go to Miami of Ohio at a very, very good time. I was there with Coach Mowry and Coach Crum were my head coaches, and I was fortunate enough to the years that I played, the 3 years that I played, we only lost one game, and we beat Florida and Georgia and South Carolina, and it was an unbelievable run. And as I look back on it, football, the game of football has taught me, like it has, I'm sure, many others, a lot about life. I mean, when you get knocked down, you get back up, you just keep on going. But anyway, in all my coaching, I've tried to, how do you develop an attitude that we had at Miami of Ohio, and even to this day, we're close. I mean, guys, I saw a former teammate a couple of weeks ago that was here at our Minnesota game, Pat Keith, and his grandson is a graduate assistant here. So, it's just you make memories, you make friendships that last forever, and usually your teammates that those are the guys that no matter if you haven't seen them in 10 or 20 or 15 years or whatever, it doesn't take long for that bond to come right back. But as I said, I had no intentions of ever coaching, but really when the time came to give the game up, I really wasn't ready to give it up, and I was fortunate enough to, because of my major, to be certified to teach anything in science. So went to Orrville, Ohio, and Mo Tipton was the head coach there. Had 6 job opportunities, and Mo kind of browbeat me into coming up there, and a very, very successful program. And so 5 years of football, I had lost one game and tied 2, and I thought, well, this is kind of fun. I think I want to try at the next level. So went to Murray State University in Murray, Kentucky, with Mike Gottfried, another Crestline, Ohio, another Ohio guy, and I was with Coach Godfrey, who the longest of anybody that I worked for. I was with him for 7 years, and I was able to, as a graduate assistant, I had my own position. I coached the secondary and my own recruiting, and so even though I wasn't making any money, I still had to get the experience of coaching and the recruiting and all the things that come with it, and so I was able to continue to climb the ladder. And I think ask anybody in the profession, if the successes that you have are usually dependent upon the people that you're able to be around. The players are number one. I mean, it's still about the players. When I was at the University of Tennessee, Ken Donahue, who was Bear Bryant's defensive coordinator for 21 years, he used to always say, Ron, it's better to be known as a bad coach with good players than a good coach with bad players. And players make the game, and it's the players' game, and then it's the coach's job is to get the players to play to the best of their ability. And I really think that's what coaching's all about, because as I just mentioned, I mean, if there was one way of doing things, we'd all be doing it the same way. Mm-hmm. So, I was just, once you get fortunate enough to be around great coaches, great people, and you learn from those. And I think what you do is you have to kind of use your personality. You take the things that you learn from the people that you work for and, fit them into your personality. I think you have to be who you are, and you have to be, it still comes down to, as I said, the players. And in college, you're recruiting players, and in the NFL, you're drafted players, and you don't always get the opportunity to, get the ones that you want, but you got to coach the ones that you got. And to me, bottom line, coaching is getting a player to play to the utmost, the best of his ability. And I think number 2, putting him in a position where he can play to the best of his ability. What's maybe a particular technique that's really good for one player, it may not be as good for the next player. And I think that's part of coaching, is being able to, as I said, put players in a position where they can be successful.
Yeah, I think that's something as you grow as a coach, you start to learn that, it's not all the cookie cutter approach. Every player is a little bit different. And it does take time to start to see that as a coach. As you look back, Coach, at your early years, in your development, who were some of those guys really who were your mentors, and what are those lessons you took away that really became part of your coaching and the way you did things?
Well, as I said, I go back to when I played at Miami of Ohio, with Coach Maury and the way that we ran the team, Coach Crum, a little bit different, but still I said a lot different, really. I mean, the two different people, but we still had the same type of players, and it was a an unselfish team. It was a team where football is about a team, and no matter how good you are, I've been fortunate enough to be around a guy like Aaron Rodgers. I mean, who's the best I've ever been around in terms of a quarterback, and but still he couldn't. You got to have good players around him. So, but how do you develop that attitude where everybody, the unselfish team attitude, where it's amazing what can be accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit, and I think that's the thing that coaches are always trying to develop, and it's hard in this day and age because everybody's the instant gratification, the media, the exposure, all the things that everybody's chasing. It's still it's hard to get everybody on that page, but. It started at Miami, and then, as I said, I was very, very fortunate to go to work for a man, Bo Tipton, who taught me, as I said, a very, very successful high school program in Orrville, Ohio, right there, Massillon, Akron, Canton, there by the Hall of Fame, a very football-rich community with a lot of tradition and so forth, and once again, Mo kind of got me, started on, how you do things. And he ran the program like a college. And as I said, then I was fortunate enough to Mike Godfrey, who, I probably am more like Coach Godfrey than anybody in terms of just the way he did things. And once again, different. And I think you learn from people that you work for. And as I said, you don't necessarily try to emulate them. You try to use the things that, that fit your personality. Frank Beamer, probably my biggest recruit. He was at the Citadel, and I recruited him to Murray State as the defensive coordinator. And then Frank and I became very, very close. And of course, Frank went on to have a great, great career and at Murray State, and of course Virginia Tech, where he played. In fact, I actually went to Virginia Tech for the 1 year, his first year at Tech. Johnny Majors at the University of Tennessee. Larry Marmee, who was on the staff, the guy that kind of talked me into going to Tennessee. Ken Donahue, as I mentioned, was Bear Bryant's defensive coordinator for 21 years. I mean, he had a different way of doing things, but it was all about football. It was all about team. It was all about getting players to play the best of their ability. But then you get opportunities to Ohio State. John Cooper, unbelievable football coach. I think one of the things that a lot of people didn't know about Coach Cooper is at Ohio State is he was a great football coach. I mean, he understood football. He understood the game. He understood how players reacted and so forth. Obviously, we struggled a little bit there in the beginning at Ohio State, but I think as towards the end of his career, I mean, the players he brought in there and so forth was unbelievable. Then, of course, going to Florida and coaching was Coach Spurrier, and that was a little bit different, being on the defensive side of the ball with strictly an offensive football coach. But still, the record, being around the good players that we had there and being able to do those things. And then Pittsburgh, Bill Cowher. I mean, guys sakes, here's a guy that was a very, very successful NFL coach. And I think when you get into the NFL, you realize not only the coaching, but you realize the personnel people. I mean, that's where you really see that, guys, how important not only a great player, but the player has to be able to fit into your system, to fit into your culture, those kinds of things. And Tom Donahue, who was the guy who was kind of in charge of personnel there with the Steelers when I was there, was just did an unbelievable job. Jim Haslett, who became the head coach of the New Orleans Saints and took me to the Saints as a coordinator. Rick Venturi, who it was the youngest head coach at the time when he was a head coach at Northwestern, the youngest Division I football coach. He was just an unbelievable football coach in terms of knowledge, in terms of getting it done, and just to help me so much. My first year as a coordinator at New Orleans, just unbelievable man. And it just goes on and on. I mean, the people that you're around, Mike McCarthy, when I was in Green Bay Packers, just unbelievable. And as I said, I think most coaches will tell you that the people that are successful in this profession, they're always going to be able to go back and say, hey, these guys are the guys that kind of got me on the track. And I think, they talk about coaching trees and so forth. I think a lot of it is they have a system. And as I said, if there was one system, whether it be offense, defense, or special teams, if there was one system that was the best, we'd all be doing the same thing.
Right.
Because ultimately everybody wants to win. But it's a system that you believe in, and there's been an awful lot of coaches try to change things, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But ultimately, you go back to your fundamentals and what really taught you the game, and that's usually what you rely on. So, but I think most coaches are going to say that the guys, the success that they have usually been a direct result of the people that they've been able to be around in this great game. And it is a great game. I think it's different from the standpoint back in the day where coaches would stay and you get into all the stories. I know they used to talk about Coach Schembechler, all the stories. Those guys would be there till late at night just telling stories and so forth. And I think it used to be that way a little bit, where now it's more where coaches get out of the office. But there's also much more information with the computers and all the things you can cut ups and teaching things that you have to help your players. It's unbelievable. So even though I think there's no question it's gotten better with as I said, there's more information out there, and I think that's what you have to do as a coach, is to be able to give your players what they can handle. It's not what it's what they can perform. Football is a reaction game. The more times you do something, the faster you're going to get. I used to always say, I was at Florida and at Illinois both. We had a lot of young players just in the beginning years, and you can't buy experience. Coach Bowden, I remember him making a comment my first year I was at Florida, saying that you're going to lose. You're going to lose a game for every freshman that starts. And I thought to myself, well, that's not good for us. We had a bunch of freshmen starting, but players are going to be better their third and fourth year. That's just the way it is. And the big job is to get the ones in there that are going to develop. And I think probably where the personnel comes in is being able to see that. Some people can see it and some people can't. And I think that's why you see a lot of discrepancies in players. That I remember Coach Paterno telling me one time, if you remember back in the I guess it was early 90s, where Penn State had kind of fallen off a little bit. And he attributed it to the fact of all this early signing where they were taking kids that looked like they were going to be really good players, but then didn't pan out to be the type of player because they're so young and they change. So, some guys, some players do develop at a faster rate and some don't, and some are already developed. Maybe they're not going to get a lot better. And he kind of attributed the trends in football to that is with all the early signing and of course now, that's what it is now. Everybody's early signing and in the colleges and kids coming out early and so forth. But, yep. Still, as I said, bottom line is getting, it comes down to getting the best players that are going to fit your program, fit your system, fit what you do and your culture and so forth. And then, getting them to play to the best of their ability. And football's a hard game. It's a hard game, and you got to make people do things sometimes that they don't want to do. And somehow, however, everybody does that differently, and I think everybody has their own way of doing that. But ultimately, it still comes down to getting the players to play to the best of their ability and what they do. And then, of course, the luck of the draw, the rub of the green come into effect in this game. So, and it's just part of it.
Coach, we got a lot of young coaches in the audience, whether that's graduate assistants or high school guys who maybe want to get into the college level and higher. And there was a spot in your career that special teams took on a role for you, and it opened that door for you to be able to move into the NFL and do some things in the NFL as well. For you, how big was having that experience and being able to dig into special teams for you, and I guess what part did that play for you as you became a head coach? The importance of special teams.
Well, when I left Pittsburgh, I said I would never deal with the punt team again, and I didn't until I became a head coach. And it's the one thing, and it helped me. Coaching special teams is really it's everybody. When you coach an offensive or defensive player, by the time you get them in college or the NFL, they have. They've been a receiver, they've been a quarterback, they've been a defensive back, they've been a defensive lineman. So they have an idea of the technique and what they have to do. When you're coaching guys in the special team, particularly, in college and in the NFL, you're coaching them to do something that they've never done that's completely new to them. And even you get one play, you don't get second down and third down on a special teams play. And some games, the special teams are not as important as others. But I when I was with Coach Gottfried, a guy that was a head coach at Youngstown State for a long time in Southern Illinois, Memphis, Coach Ray Dempsey, another Ohio guy. He had been the special teams coordinator for the Detroit Lions, and this is that's kind of when he used to work with me about how important the special teams were, and if I ever really had an ambition to go on and at a high level, that background had helped me, and I've been fortunate enough to coach 2/3 of the game, or at the highest level, being the coordinator in defense with the New Orleans Saints, and of course the coordinator with the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers special teams, and it truly is. I mean, it's not important until it loses a game for you, and that's this day and age, winning and losing, I mean, that's what you're judged on. It's nothing else. And so the more you know about the game, the better chance you have to put your players in a position to be successful. And I've been around a lot of coaches that don't know a lot about the kicking game. And I think you look at time management, the issues that happen in the kicking game, the last 2 minutes of Rick Ventura used to always say the last 2 minutes of the half or the last 2 minutes of the game, there's more coaches that get fired because those are the things that people have time to think about. I mean, they, if it's at halftime, then they get the however long the halftime is, they get to complain about it and talk about it and second guess it. And of course, if it's after the game, it's the same thing. So, those kinds of things that and a lot of times it comes down to special teams plays. Those are things that can have an effect on your success as a football coach. So, I think the more you know about the game, it's just like anything else. The more you know about something, the more successful, the better chance you've got of being successful.
So you mentioned that you coach 2/3 of the game. Doesn't mean you don't have the knowledge of that other offensive side. What was your approach as the head coach then, a guy who had been, defensive coordinator, defensive guy, special teams coordinator? What was your approach in how you handled the offensive side of the ball and what your involvement in game plan and those types of decisions, big decisions on a game day?
Well, we tried to make as many of the decisions, and obviously you cannot make them all, but we tried to make as many decisions as we possibly could during the week. And one of the reasons I'm here with Coach Loxley right now is, Lox was my offensive coordinator, and we had a very, very close relationship. I knew what was going on. I had confidence in him but I knew what was going on with our offense. I think, and I'd always looked at it from a defensive point of view. In other words, what is the offense? As a defensive coach, what is the offense? What causes you problems? What are the things that you don't like to see? So I was able to approach it from that standpoint, and I think we worked well together because he would tell me what he was trying to do to a defense, and obviously I would tell him how the defense is looking at it. And it's so funny. I'll sit in these staff meetings now and I'll listen to him, That's exactly what he's doing the other way around, talking to the defensive coaches.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what I did is I was always involved with the offensive side of the ball. I would be on the offensive side during practice, and then I would circle plays that I maybe had questions about or so forth, and then I would be with the offensive staff and watch those plays, and then I would watch the practice tape with the defensive coaches. So I was able to have a hand or a grip on both sides of the ball and what was going on. Like I said, you try to make as many of the decisions, before the game. You talk about as many game situations as you possibly can. What are you going to do in this situation? What's your thoughts in this situation? For two reasons. Number one, I want it to already be thought of, and number two, that I would know what was, what he was thinking and what was going on. And then if I, during the game, I would try to get a feel with what the defense was trying to do to the offense. What are they trying to do to affect our offense? So, and I think if you look at Nick Saban or you look at Coach Belichick or those guys, that's exactly what they do. People, obviously Nick Saban is a defensive football coach, but I promise you, he knows what's going on the offensive side of the football, and in every aspect, just as most head coaches are going to know what's going on both sides in all three phases of the game.
As you were looking to hire that offensive coordinator on your staff, were there any things from a philosophical standpoint, again, being that guy with a defensive mind who, you said, this is really what I'd like to see. Maybe it's not exactly the style of play, but philosophically, these are things we need to do to be successful. What were those things that you really wanted on your offense?
Well, in both places, and at the University of Florida and at the University of Illinois, I hired guys that did the things that I didn't like to see on defense: the high tempo, the multiple formations, the things that would cause defenses issues in terms of substitutions and personnel groupings. And then obviously when you add the option in there, and obviously I think offenses today are a little bit ahead of the defenses. I think with the option, you had the option back in the day, but now you got the RPOs, which is the same thing. It's just a pass instead of how they reading it and how they, what are those kinds of things that cause the defense's issues to, the defense has got to be able to, just like an offense checks an offensive play, well, a defense has got to be able to check defensive plays as well. So it's a cat and mouse game. And I think, that's what you have to be good during the game. I think if you look at the most successful coaches nowadays, they're guys that can make the adjustments during the game. And once again, it goes back to putting your players in position to be successful. If a particular, you're going to usually know in the first couple of series, or a lot of offensive coaches, they got a 15 play or 12 play series of plays that they've already scripted plays, and that they're going to see what you're going to do with particular formations and particular motions and the speed of the game and that kind of stuff. How you handle that, and then they're going to kind of settle into to what's going to happen. And I think as a defensive coach and vice versa, you have to be able to make those adjustments during the game, and it's special teams too. It's amazing what you have to you got to be able to adjust during the game. And I think the best coaches are guys that are able to do that.
Coach, now on the side you're on with being an analyst, I'm sure you see a lot more of what's going on with the analytics side. Certainly been a boom in that, and things that you see some of the situations come up that are definitely analytics driven. And I've always asked and pick the brains of head coaches and coordinators about the idea of giving up a score late in the game. And sure enough, 1 week in the season, you see it on Saturday with Indiana and Penn State, and then you see it with the Lions and the Falcons on Sunday. I've never seen anything like it, where 2 games they give up a score and end up winning because of that. But certainly kind of highlights the importance of understanding the analytics. As we've really made a lot of advancements in that. Typically guys just refer to it as the book, right? And you see that binder on the sideline. But with the analytics side, and I guess that kind of being pushed more and more to the forefront, how important is that in the game today?
Well, I think the analytics, and where I really started getting into the analytical part of it is when I went to Green Bay. but because it's all analytics. I mean, and the NFL has become that, and certain situations. But I think it still comes down to during the game, a coach has to have a gut feeling, and I think I don't know if it was this year or last year where Coach Belichick was asking, so analytically you should have done this, but you did this, and once again, I mean, it kind of comes down to your gut feeling too. I mean, you gotta rely on your experiences. I mean, this man's been coaching football for 40 or 50 years. I mean, you got to really be able to rely on your experiences. But on the same token, sometimes it's hard. It's hard to look at those analytics, and because they're right. And I think the other place where analytics have really become a big part is how we train the athletes now. With the GPSs and the workloads, and you're able to keep them fresh and hopefully healthy. So that's another big area that's really taken over here in the last couple of years, where teams are able to, look at the workload and kind of foresee that, hey, I got a guy that's, he played 85 plays last game, and maybe we got to back him off a little bit this week. And, so you try to keep them fresh. So I think it's really become a big thing in that standpoint. But then, of course, the analytics of, where's the ball at? In the NFL, for example, once the ball crosses 32, there's a 30, or once it crosses the 30, there's a 32% chance you're going to score. So as a kickoff return team, do you take a fair catch at the 25 and put the ball on the 25, or you try to run it out, or because those yards make a difference, and so you have to kind of, what kind of return team do you have? What kind of cover team do they have? The wins, all those things kind of go into it, and you try to make the best possible decision. But I still think a lot of it comes down to a gut feeling as well. And I think most, the experienced coaches are going to use those analytics and rely on those analytics, but still going to use their gut feeling.
Well, Coach, to tie things up, I had mentioned to you, I'd ask the question I ask everybody at the end here, taken from one of my favorite books, Bill Walsh's Finding the Winning Edge. And, you look at all the things you've done as a coach on and off the field. What's the one thing you'd point to as really giving your guys the winning edge?
Well, I don't know if there's one thing in particular, but I really believe this. I think football is a team game, and the more you can help your team become a team and pull together, the better chance you have of winning. And then I think the other thing is doing the things that your players do best, being able to adapt to them instead of making them adapt to you. And then once again, putting them in positions to be successful. The winning edge to me is number one, you better have players, and number two, putting them in position to be successful and play at the highest peak.
Coach, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're going to be speaking at one of the first clinics of the offseason, December 8th through the 12th, the Illinois High School Football Coaches Association Clinic. I believe a lot of what you're going to focus on is just some of the Q&A and coach development type of topics.
Well, I hope so. And once again, Illinois was awfully good to me. I spent 7 years in Champaign, and we were fortunate enough to take a program. It kind of had fallen on some tough times, and probably went to the Rose Bowl third year, which is probably too early. It kind of retarded our progress there. But anyway, it is what it is. So, but I'm looking forward to speaking with the Illinois people.
Well, Coach, again, we appreciate your time. We're looking forward to that, and good luck to you in Maryland here the rest of the season.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you again for listening to the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. Please, if you are enjoying the podcast, head over to iTunes or Spotify and click 5-star for rate. If you have a minute, write a review. It really helps the podcast. Check out our new home for the Coaching Coordinator Podcast. That's at coachandcoordinator.com. And follow me on Twitter at Coach K. Grabowski.